Aloha, I'm Felicia Miller Johnson, and I conduct work life video interviews with career professionals that become an all intuitive conversation. Aloha, and welcome to another episode of All Intuitive Conversation. I'm Felicia Miller Johnson, and I encourage individuals to live smart and ascend to new levels of work life success. So today, I have the pleasure of connecting with Stephanie. And this is one of those situations, and it is definitely divine timing of when I was supposed to connect with her because she shared that it's been like a year and a half since she's kind of like been exposed to the show. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it today because I had a repairman that was being delayed. And I was like, no, we moved this from tomorrow. We were supposed to do the show. It was like, hey, can you come on today? So everything is meant to be. So let's bring her to the screen. Aloha, Stephanie.
Aloha, hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being open to having this all intuitive conversation with me. As I was just sharing in the preliminary, was that we were originally scheduled for tomorrow, and I have to travel out of state. And so you graciously allowed us to come today. And then when I was waiting today, I was waiting for a repairman. I was like, I have to get back to the house. Like, we rescheduled this. And so it was like, everything is divine timing. When I'm supposed to talk with Stephanie, everything will work out. And here you are.
Here we are. Yes.
Absolutely. So let's start with this because you and I have never met before. And let's start with where is here? Where are you connecting from?
Right now, I'm in San Francisco, California.
San Francisco, California. Okay. Are you from there?
So I'm from that general area, yeah. But I moved to Austin, Texas earlier this year. So yeah, I'm traveling and visiting for the first time in 9 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So Austin, Texas, that's definitely a big difference from California to
Yeah. I
Austin.
didn't think it would be as different as it is. Like it's way more different than I thought it would be.
Tell me, like, what sparked the move to go to Austin, Texas?
So a couple of things, serendipity and synchronicities. I can be more specific as well. So I was traveling for 2 years after living in San Francisco and that being a big life goal and finally living there, building up my career there, and then traveling, but then feeling kind of like, okay, I'm ready to root down again and call somewhere home.
Okay.
And then I moved back to San Francisco effectively, but then there was something that wasn't going right. The building of the that I was living in was sold. So I had to leave again. And instead of just finding another place in San Francisco, I thought, well, maybe there's a chance that I meant to be somewhere different. So I put an open call on Instagram out and I asked in my stories, who has a place that I can reliably rent for at least 6 months? And a woman that I met when I was living in Thailand about 6 months before, she responded, and we had not been in contact that whole time since we met. And she said, because she was from Austin, she said that she had a place that she was actually about to put up on the market that she owned. So, and the timing aligned. The same week that she wanted someone to move in was the same week that I needed to move. So, I was not excited, honestly, but I also didn't feel resistance. I just thought, okay, that's a synchronicity. Okay, I'm going to move across the country and see how that goes.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's interesting because the first card you came here was the Six of Cups, and it has this little couple here, young couple, exchanging cups, and there's this guy. I like to say an angel, in the background. But what is here is standing out is the house that's in the background, and on the bottom of the card it says, "The return of people or romances from your past, romanticizing how things used to be." And you said how moving was a little bit different in Texas than it was in California. So I'm going to go back to the California part. What was it that you loved about living there?
I'd say the people, the level of ambition, the things just, it was one of those things where I was really finding my way. It was such a life chapter of
Mhm.
a lot of self discovery, a lot of discovering what my passions and strengths are,
Mhm.
and really life purpose work, but in a really fun way where it certainly, I wouldn't say that it was an easy lifestyle living in San Francisco, but I
Mhm.
wanted it so badly that I made it work. And yeah, was commonly hosting community events and felt the most socially connected that I had ever felt.
Mm.
And yeah, it's interesting that that comes up because I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, right? How sometimes, a big catastrophic event in the world happens. I won't name any names. And then those relationships that you built, sure, some of them stand the test of time. Maybe they're the ones where like, of course, that relationship would stand the test of time. And maybe others who are like, oh, we weren't really that close before, but we became closer through that. Interesting, cool. And then others where you thought, okay, these friendships are pretty core to at least how I am or how I was in that life chapter. And then it can become kind of shocking when it's like, oh, they actually don't exist anymore. Or maybe the
Mm.
sentiment is like neutral or even negative, and kind of gaining that awareness in
Mhm.
time.
Well, that's interesting because the next card, because your two came out at the same time, and it was a King of Pentacles, and he was sitting on the throne. And here's what it says: compassionate, accomplished, charismatic, grounded, a time of great success, financial security and prosperity, the Midas touch, everything turning out beautifully. So for you to make a change and say, hey, I'm just going to put this call out there and somebody have a place, tell me about your career that you have that allowed you per se to have the flexibility, the openness in order to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see, you know, before all the traveling started, I was doing a combination of coaching and events,
Uh-huh.
community building, and also just having fun with a variety of different projects. I've worked in market research and all these things, but in recent years, I've been pretty focused on coaching. So, of course, when events couldn't really happen anymore, that became the primary focus of helping people mainly connect with their highest sense of self-confidence to thrive socially. But that could be dating, that could be networking, that could be within their family situation, that could be within their work environment. So yeah, that became something that took that there was more space for me to devote even more time to serving people in that way. So during 2020 and even to today, that's how I spend the majority of my time when I'm working.
Hmm. Okay. Well, the next card that came out here has to do with the oil of magnolia. And the theme says amplify. Trigger says, I can't get anything right. True statement, which goes back to which we kept saying, I am in divine time. Again, I am in divine time. It says, harness your loving energy and watch as one miracle unfolds after another. So the next question that's coming through is, tell me about a miracle that happened in your life.
Hmm. I would say when I think of miracles, I think of sometimes how certain living situations have unfolded. So, I mean, even so, sometimes when I think of miracles, they can be really grand and kind of like, whoa, how did that happen? Or maybe they're more under the radar. So, I mean, the most present one that that I think is really cool would be a synchronicity of even ending up in San Francisco again, traveling and essentially being offered, a cat sitting role that was the same compensation as the plane ticket. So, like little synchronicities
Wow.
like that, where I was like, oh, like that's actually interesting how that works
Mhm.
out. So even though I thought, well, maybe I could go longer without visiting California again, it just, again, there wasn't a huge source of excitement, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. But then there was no resistance either. And for me, that's how intuition shows up. And certainly when it came to moving to Austin, that was kind of a miracle in a way of synchronicities. And then
Mm-hmm.
even in San Francisco, when I very first moved there, there were a series of events in 2016 where I lost my job and I needed to move out of the apartment that I was in when I first moved to San Francisco. And there were some other personal things that just things were not at their A game.
Uh-huh.
And there was a decision to make of, do I really want to stay here enough? And the answer was yes. And then that same week that I needed to move, one of my acquaintances said that they had a living situation available in the unit below them. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a very competitive market in San Francisco in 2016, where I had applied to so many hundreds of places and gone through so much trial and error to get to the place where I was living. And then
Yeah.
when it wasn't working out, I just was not available to leave San Francisco. So it was kind of amazing that, oh, it actually gets to be easy sometimes, where I didn't put effort into that. I simply vocalized, okay, well, I want to stay here, but this isn't working anymore. So,
Mm-hmm.
through circumstances out of my control. And then I was offered, oh, why don't you go ahead and, meet the person downstairs, met them. And then I moved in, within about a week's time. And then the rest of, the things start to unfolding socially and professionally, where then, I mean, it wasn't like there was no struggle, but there was a greater sense of ease and just this inner knowing of like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be.
Yes. So a card that came out here was dealing with spiritual struggles. And
Mm.
as you were talking about, we were just kind of harnessing on like the requirements of having to move and just where am I going to stay? And at the same time, I'm still feeling a sense of freedom, but yet where am I going to live? And so here's the thing, I want to read this to you. Spiritual struggles. This card, like the decaton itself, represents an individual who is on a spiritual journey. This is you. For those still living, this card plants a vivid picture of the spiritual life and journey of the soul. It takes hard work to be spiritually pure while living in a world that does not seem to value the condition of the soul. But your relationship with the unseen forces around you is your responsibility. In the end, no one will be able to answer for the life you have lived besides yourself. It is easier to lose yourself in a haze of sex, alcohol, and mass media than to do the hard work required for spiritual growth. Those are the lessons inherent in this card. It may be suggesting you should focus on your spiritual path and put worldly issues to the side for the moment. It may also indicate that you are already on the right path. If you are struggling spiritually, it will affirm your approach and encourage you to continue. Shinu literally represents you, your spiritual potential, and the path of your soul. How does that resonate with you, Stephanie?
I'm kind of curious to see that image a little bit better. Okay, thank you. So
Mm-hmm.
there, it looks like there's a social scene and,
Uh-huh.
leisure, fun, and then there's someone off to the side. Is it they're washing their hands or something?
So with this, it appears as though because there is a fluid. So this is what comes to my mind is that it's like but yeah. Have you ever seen that episode of I Love Lucy when they were making
Oh
wine?
yeah.
This is kind of what this looks like. This reminds me of like the grapes. They're here
Yeah.
stomping because then there's this fluid that's coming out into
Mm.
the basin. So it's like, how do you transform something from from grapes to something that you would think you just stomped all over it.
Mm.
And you're
Oh, they're
like,
making wine. Goodness,
mhm,
that went over my head. I was like, what are they doing? They seem to be having fun. Okay. They're making wine.
mhm. So they're
Okay. So
making
it's
wine,
about the process and
the
having fun in
process.
the process. But, from what you shared, what stood out is that it's less about being so focused on the worldly components of maybe even socializing, maybe even like the process itself, and more on the undercurrent of
Yeah.
it, not even about the result, but about like the energy of creation in an abstract sense. That's what I was getting for what you were saying. Because I mean, I know for me, I've been aware of my living environment and my situation and the people that I'm around. And, when you've been in a place where you're like, oh, everything clicks, this is so great. And then you're in a place where it's like, okay, there are some differences in values, differences in culture. And, it's one of those things where I'm not concerned with fitting in. I'm not going to contort myself.
Mhm.
However, I can be kind and,
Okay.
curious. That's how I'm going to always be. But maybe there's even permission to disengage a little bit from an environment that is less resonant to go into the internal world, kind of having that balance where it's not about forsaking one for the other, but maybe there are chapters or periods of time where it serves one soul to focus more on the other. And I know that, back in 2016 when I moved to San Francisco, that was my soul's calling, was to be as social as I was and to build those
Mm,
relationships, whether they persist today or not. And guess what? The impact of those relationships, they still exist today, even without me
yeah.
there. There doesn't even need to be ego present in it because I know that a part of my soul's calling was to connect the people that I did. And there are certain relationships that have been forged that will outlast and have outlasted our relationship in the 3D.
So the oil that I chose today to connect with you, as you simply said, was balance, which is I felt this is energetically. The other card that came out here that was sitting here just waiting for you to come around to it has the theme of harmony. The triggerment statement says, I'm boiling over. The true statement, Stephanie says, I allow myself to feel. Give
Mm,
yourself space to decompress, which is technically what they're compressing down and stepping onto the grapes, and take time to nurture your body, mind, and spirit, which is going back to this whole spirit connection. Allow emotions to surface and release. So it kind of sounds like, the relationships that you're having, if they're going to be there, what did they mean? If you're going to a new place, that's not so much of what I kind of thought this would be. How do I let all that release? Because then the next page, the next card that came out here, ultimately has the concept of writing a person's story,
mm,
writing a personal legacy. So even though you're no longer there, or have those relationships that you see every day, there's always going to be this legacy that you have left.
yeah.
Like that your essence, your being of which you're going to be there, will always be there. So it's release any struggle or frustration that may have come um, with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where I know that in relationships, sometimes I think that things can be neutral, when they end, right? Or they're rarely completely neutral, though. I think people, in order to move on, color things either with having a sense of distaste or disease, like, "Ooh, that was bad," and that helps people move on. Or they say, "Oh, that was so amazing," but then they have a hard time letting go. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that call for balance, but also recognizing that some of the things, even in like a broad sense, yeah, I'll speak from my perspective. Some of the things that I've done where I knew, okay, I'm being intuitively led, like this is a
Yep.
little intense or this is a high volume of whatever it is, but I know that I'm supposed to be doing it. And that like the legacy is in the people's lives that I've touched. And no matter, how someone decides to view me after the fact, whatever helps them let go of the relationship, the legacy gets to kind of outlive it, the essence. And I do think that some people are, a bit more emotionally mature than others when it comes to transitioning a relationship dynamic from being close to being less close, or, that sort of thing. So I think that there's grace
Mm-hmm.
in allowing people to process how they would like to process and not taking any of it on. If some people do feel like they need to make something really sour, maybe we can mix that in with the winemaking metaphor and grapes. Because, yeah, like I think deep down, people know the essence of a soul. And even though they try to layer on all this, all this stuff, like, oh, there's this one thing this person did that I didn't like. Then they're like, that negates all the good stuff. It's like, no, our souls know when we've served or been served, but it doesn't mean that the 3D connection lasts forever, but the legacy of the impact of being in the energy of someone or combining forces to create experiences or have a dynamic within a relationship that gets to exist as long or as deeply as anything else.
Indeed. So as you were talking, I said, okay, what is the energetic vibe that Stephanie is exuding right now? And you got Lord Ganesh. And on here it says infinite abundance. Obstacles are being removed. Spiritual support and connections are increasing. It is important at this time to move beyond the limitations of it's not meant to be and focus on, and this is for my highest good, then the universe will take me there safely. Just like those relationships are not meant for your highest good, but wherever you're supposed to be moving to, you'll be getting there safely. Ganesh is not only bringing a clear light to your external situation, but also helping you clear up any inner conflicts. When obstacles arise, know that they are just reminders that you care about your path and that you have the ability to change your current situation. Ganesh is here to help you. Thank him for clearing the way. To increase your connection with him, you may want to chant in Sanskrit, Om Gam Kambate Nama? Not sure, you might have to look that one up
Yeah.
online. That has a better pronunciation of that. But yeah, but just be encouraged. Like the path that you're leading for, the moves and all those different things are they're just part of your legacy. But the spirit team, they are encouraging. There seems to be more of a spiritual connection coming up. Continue to just feel led with that as you see fit. And then tapping into you. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for some reason, I'm thinking back to the very second card and kind of how, it was
Mhm.
this image of abundance and everything kind of coming together. Was that for San Francisco or for Austin?
It is for the place that you are always at
Just within myself.
within yourself.
Cool. Okay, because I was like, wait, which one? But yeah, no, I like that
It
because
is always with you.
I do like to think that we can just kind of bring ourselves with us and attract certain things based on that. But I also do believe that different places do have different energies and certainly different dynamics of like what's normal, what's celebrated.
You. Hmm. So the prayer for the Psalms is light is shed upon the righteous and joy on the upright in heart. Psalms 97:11. You are the light. Doesn't matter where you live. You
Thank
take
you.
that energetically with you. Stephanie, thank you so much for having an all intuitive conversation with me. So I noticed that you have on here you're a confident introvert, author, holistic ambition host. Tell me a little bit about that and how the guests can learn more about that.
Yes. So, a little bit more about Confident Introvert. That's a book that I wrote based on hosting 1,000 networking events in San Francisco. So that was kind of what I alluded to earlier, where it's like,
Hmm.
why am I doing this crazy amount of hosting when I identified as being more of an introvert, but I was actually getting so much energy from the experience and learning so much, being
Yes.
behind the scenes and really getting to welcome people in a way that I always wish that I could have been welcomed at more points in my life.
Yes.
And yeah, I wrote that book and it came out kind of encapsulating that chapter of just such connection and really having ownership over how I showed up socially and being very resilient to social rejections more so than I had previously because there was this abundance
Hmm.
of just an inner knowing and confidence that couldn't really be shaken. And, I do believe confidence is a muscle. So, every now and then I refer back to my own book to remind myself of my strength. Like,
Yes.
I remember a past mentor. Oh my gosh, it was kind of funny. I was talking with her, and we all have our ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
And she read something to me and she said, "Do you know who said that?" And I was like, "Sounds very familiar." She said, "That was
You,
you
I'm about
in
to say
your
you.
book." And yes, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So sometimes I think it's great to have mentors, but also if anyone listening is in a really high point in one area of your life, document it, write it down, refer back to it when life inevitably does its thing. So I know that was like a little bit of like some life
No.
philosophy in there, but
Mhm.
and then Holistic Ambition host. So my podcast is called Holistic Ambition. It's redefining what it means to be successful with more well-being, meaning, and fun in your career, business, and relationships. So that's on iTunes. And then, anyone listening to this, go ahead and check out Confident Introvert on it's on Amazon, but it's not just there. So go ahead, search it if you want to support a local bookstore. I know it's made the rounds. And if you would like a free gift, a free chapter of the book, if you're like, I just kind of want to check it out, then you
Yes.
can go to stephaniethoma.com/free chapter to get that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing that and being open to having this all intuitive conversation. And for those that you are watching, if you're interested in being a guest of All Intuitive Conversation, send me a message on LinkedIn. There may be a few months waiting list, as we found out with Stephanie, but we believe that it is all in divine timing when you will appear as a guest on the show. You can watch clips on YouTube at All Intuitive Conversation. Thank you again. And this has been an All Intuitive Conversation.